To get promoted, I had to travel from our head office in Reading to Manchester for management training. I was to become an assistant human resources manager. I had to undergo training in difficult conversations. It was a 2-week course that I signed up for to learn the finer points of personnel management techniques. The HR department at my company didn't have a good reputation, and in most cases I thought it was deserved. I worked with a group of arrogant jerks who considered the rest of the company's employees to be a hindrance to doing business. You know the kind of people I'm talking about, the ones who actually did something, made a profit, and paid our salaries. I hope to change that situation, and this course was supposed to help me do that. The current deputy head of human resources had been transferred to another position because the head of the department believed that her poor attitude toward employees was largely due to her influence. Dave Harris, deputy head of human resources, it sounded good, and I hoped that in a few years I would be able to drop the word deputy. We found out about the course 4 weeks before it started. It was supposed to last 2 weeks, but it ended late on Friday and started at 8 a.m. on Monday, and given the traffic in Birmingham, we decided I would stay for the weekend. I asked my wife Carrie if she wanted to come and stay with me, as she didn't work on Friday afternoon, could take Friday morning off, and could easily drive to me on Friday morning and maybe not go to work on Monday. We had done this before. When I first mentioned it, she was thrilled, but a couple of weeks before I left, she said she had things to do at work and wouldn't be able to come. This was another one of those things that hadn't been going well for the past 2 weeks. We had been talking about starting a family, and to be honest, we had been at it like rabbits. Everything was great. About 2 weeks before that, we had a birth control pill disposal ceremony. But about 2 weeks before the ceremony, she seemed to have changed her mind and started to waver a bit. And sex almost completely disappeared. I brought it up and wanted to try to conceive before I left, but she seemed a little indecisive. Something was wrong. She was wavering. Kids aren't something you can waver about. I asked her if she wanted to wait until I settled into my new job, in which case she would have to start taking the pill again and I would use condoms. I wouldn't be happy if that happened. We discussed it at length over the weekend, and she seemed to have changed her mind about the children again and decided it was time to take action. By lunchtime, the rabbits were back in the house, in the garden, and in the trunk of the car. Something bothered me, but I was preoccupied with either work or sex. When we arrived at the course on Monday, Marjorie, the course instructor, told us that we wouldn't be working on Friday because there was some unplanned electrical work to be done in the building. They apologized for not letting us know earlier, but they had only found out the night before. We would work later in the week to make up for it, which wasn't a problem. I had nothing else to do. I decided to surprise the love of my life and drive home for the weekend. The trip took about 4 hours, and if I left at 3 in the morning, I would probably be home around 7 and hopefully be able to convince her to take the day off, call work and say she was sick or something like that. When I got back, she would still be asleep, and we could continue trying to conceive a child. Leaving at that time would allow me to avoid most of the traffic. I knew there was road work scheduled for the night, but I figured I'd get caught in it after the roads opened. On Friday morning, as I was driving down the highway, I remembered how we met 9 years ago. We had been married for 7 years. She was at a bachelorette party in Blackpool. My friends and I went there for a bachelor party. Most of the guys were hoping to meet the girls who were there for the bachelorette party. We were all single. Well, except for the groom. I was the best man at the wedding of my best friend Gerald and his bride Lisa. My job was to make sure that no one put Gerald, or Jerry as he was known, on a train to John O'Groats or some other faraway place with no money in his pocket, and that he didn't do anything that would upset Lisa. That was the hardest part. At times, I even doubted whether the wedding would take place. Gerald was a bit of a womanizer and sometimes behaved recklessly. I believe some of his admirers were married women. He would occasionally be late or fail to show up for planned events, making excuses about his car breaking down or something similar. But I think it was the women. I told him he was playing with fire by dating married women and could bring the wrath of an angry husband down on himself. He just laughed and said he was a fast runner. I suggested he run not only fast, but far, but he just laughed. Jerry and I were like night and day. He was practical and athletic, and I was academic. He would come over to my house and fix things, and I would fill out his tax returns and paperwork. But we had two passions in common: cricket and beer. He played cricket. I watched. He tried to teach me how to play, but I was hopeless. I couldn't throw the ball straight. It flew all over the place, and I couldn't hit it. I think he hit the wicket more often than I hit the ball. He told me I had no coordination. He was probably right. We played a couple of rounds of golf, but the ball didn't move. I walked a lot. We both discovered at an early age that we liked dark British beer. I remember the Hangover after my 17th birthday. We also found a few European lagers that we liked. Now that we're older, we could often be found on Sundays at the local cricket club with a group of other people analyzing the game on TV while we drank beer. It was the only place where Jerry didn't flirt with the wives and daughters of the cricket club members. I think it was his refuge. Jerry loves cars, especially big American ones. Sometimes I think he used expensive cars to pick up girls until he met Lisa. But here we were in Blackpool, celebrating his last week of freedom before the wedding. I made sure Jerry didn't do anything that could jeopardize the wedding. Lisa would never have forgiven him if he had crossed the line that separated them as a couple about to get married, if you know what I mean. His wild streak seemed to have calmed down when he met Lisa and proposed to her. At the bachelor party, I managed to keep Jerry out of trouble, and we had a good time drinking. In fact, I got him so drunk that I had to put him to bed before his wandering eyes got him into trouble. I drank moderately so I could keep an eye on Jerry and the other guys, although I must admit I had a couple of pints and a couple of shots, especially after putting the very drunk groom to bed. I think some of the guys got into some kind of trouble. I went down to breakfast at the small guest house where we were staying. I had only been there a few minutes when an attractive young woman entered and was shown to a table next to mine. At that time of the morning, we were the only guests there. She looked a little disheveled, but I didn't mention it. I looked at her and asked, "Did you have a good night?" "Yes, you could say that. A bachelorette party." She looked at me. "And you?" "Not bad. A bachelor party. I managed to keep the groom out of trouble. I'm the best man. Did everything go well for you?" I was a bridesmaid, and I think I managed to convince most of them not to take their panties off. Well, the ones who are married and the ones who are getting married soon. I'm not sure about the unmarried ones, but that's their business. Instead of talking across the room, why don't you come over and have breakfast with me? We introduced ourselves, and she said her name was Carrie. I did, and we discussed each couple's upcoming wedding. We discovered that we were both from the same part of the country. I'm from Basingstoke, she's from Andover. Well, a small village called Anna Valley, not far from Andover. We discovered many other similarities. The weddings were on the same day, the following Saturday. Mine was at 10 in the morning and would be over early because I had to drive the happy couple to Southampton to catch a cruise ship for their honeymoon. Her wedding was 2 days later, with a reception at a nice hotel near Andover. She joked that I would have an affair with the maid of honor. I told her that the maid of honor was my sister, so that wouldn't work. I jokingly asked if she was going to have an affair with the best man. She replied that she couldn't stand him. He was an obnoxious, talkative idiot. After coffee, orange juice, and poached eggs with toast, I started to feel better, and things started to go well. We talked for quite a while. Then other guests began to arrive. Most of them looked a little out of sorts. Carrie and I hit it off pretty well. I told her about myself and Jerry, and she told me that she and the bride had been best friends in college and that the bride had asked her to be her maid of honor because she didn't trust her friends from her hometown. She knew almost nothing about the bride's family except for her parents, whom she had met a few times. She said, "Actually, I've talked to you more than I've talked to most of her relatives. Maybe you guys want to stop by for a drink on your way from Southampton. You'll be passing by anyway." She admitted that it might distract the unbearable jerk. I don't think she knew the geography of southern England very well. But I wasn't going to turn down an offer like that. It wasn't too far off my route. In any case, she was witty, intelligent, made me laugh, and was very nice. And it could lead to other adventures. We exchanged phone numbers, and I said I'd think about it depending on the traffic. By then, people were starting to gather, and it was obvious that some had already started flirting. Many, both men and women, were hungover. Then Jerry showed up. I looked at him and frowned. He got the hint and stayed away, but gave me a thumbs up, clearly thinking I was lucky to have gotten him into bed. Over the course of the week, Carrie and I talked several times about how the wedding preparations were going. For me, it was easy, as Lisa's mother was taking care of most things. But for Carrie, it was a nightmare. It turned out that one of the married ladies was having an affair, and her husband found out. All kinds of rumors were flying around, and she was trying to cover it up so as not to ruin the wedding. It turned out that her lover was the bride's sister. "I'd really like to see my friend next Saturday if you're free." Suddenly, I was a friend, and I liked it. Before leaving Southampton, I sent her a text message saying that I would probably be passing through Andover around 5 o'clock and that she could call me if she still wanted me to stop by. I received a reply almost immediately, but I couldn't answer because I was driving. 2 minutes later, the phone rang. It was Carrie. She apologized for sending the text because as soon as she did, she realized I was driving. And yes, she really wanted to see me. She had already asked the bride's mother, who was happy that I was coming. She had to hurry because she had called from the bathroom. When I arrived, the formal part of the reception was over and the party was starting. I quickly found Carrie. She hugged me and kissed me on the cheek. I quickly noticed the unpleasant guy. It wasn't hard. I also saw a couple sitting in the corner, not talking and looking cold. I recognized the woman from the guest house. I think it was the one who had behaved inappropriately in Blackpool. Carrie and I talked about it a little. I told her that I couldn't understand cheating. If you love someone, you stay with them. She agreed. I hadn't been drinking, so just after 10, I said I had to go and went home at a reasonable hour. Carrie took me by the hand and said, "I have a room here." I didn't know what to say, but she continued, "It's a double room, and it will stay that way." She looked at me thoughtfully and said, "This is our first date." I nodded, hoping she would change her mind, but I was happy to spend time with her. "You can stay, have a beer, we can dance some more." Again, an offer I couldn't refuse, but it was clear from her tone that nothing was going to happen tonight. That was fine with me. We hadn't known each other very long. We had a few drinks and danced a lot, her pressing herself against me during the slow dances. We were almost the last to leave. We slept in separate beds, and when we were both getting dressed to go to bed, there was an awkward moment in the bathroom. Seeing her like that, I hurried to get into bed. It would have been awkward. Early in the morning, I felt Carrie lie down next to me. We hugged, and my hand naturally fell on her breast. It was unintentional, just natural and pleasant. She turned toward me cautiously. She kissed me gently on the lips and said, "Not yet." My hand was now on her back. I asked if I could. She nodded, smiled, kissed me again, and then closed her eyes. She ignored me. At breakfast, we exchanged meaningful glances but ignored them. We agreed to meet the following weekend, somewhere between Basingstoke and Andover. We met at a country pub and had dinner, and before I knew it, it was time to order the last round and leave. I suggested that next time she come to my place and then we could go to hers. Meeting halfway didn't seem like a good idea to me. She agreed, but the following weekend, we would go to her place first. The following Saturday, I arrived at the small house she rented, she made dinner, and after dinner we just sat in front of the fireplace and watched something on TV. It was so cozy. In the middle of the evening, she came closer and leaned against me. It felt so natural. When it was time to leave, it was already quite dark. She walked out to my car to see me off, and we kissed tenderly. I caressed her face gently. She took my hand and moved it from her face to her chest. We agreed to meet at my place the following week. When she showed up, she looked stunning. I couldn't believe I was dating such a beautiful, smart, and intelligent girl. I live in a small apartment on the outskirts of Basingstoke. I made sure everything was perfectly clean. When she arrived, she had a small bag with her. I was in the kitchen that day. I had worked hard. I noticed that she had had more than one glass of wine. I don't have a fireplace, just a TV, but that's okay. We watched a movie, I don't remember which one. As soon as we sat down, she came closer to me and said, "Do you mind if I stay the night?" My heart was racing, but everything about her behavior indicated that she wanted to take it slow, and that was fine with me. I told her that I only had one bedroom and that I would sleep on the couch. I hoped that we could sleep together in my bed. I didn't sleep on the couch. The first night was very cautious. We made love gently, overcoming the initial excitement. After that, everything went smoothly. We were both adventurous, introducing each other to things we hadn't tried before, and not just in the bedroom, on the couch, on the beach, or in the sea in Majorca. It was a little complicated. 2 years later, we got married, and I'm not sure her parents really loved me. They gave the impression that I wasn't good enough for her. But it was her choice. She moved into my apartment. She could commute to her job in Andover from Basingstoke, and I continued working in Reading. Life was very good. After a few years, we managed to buy a small house on the outskirts of Basingstoke. Everything was going well, and Jerry and I often met up on Sundays to have a drink and play cricket. He still did odd jobs around the house, although I was becoming more skilled thanks to YouTube. But I still did his paperwork. I thought Jerry had stopped cheating and settled down, although a couple of years ago he asked me if Lisa had called to say we were playing golf. I told him I wouldn't do that. If he wanted to have fun, let him have fun. It was foolish of him, considering the risk of losing his wife and 2-year-old daughter if Lisa caught him with another woman. He just waved it off, saying everything would be fine. I told Carrie what he was like before he married Lisa, and that I thought he was having an affair again, and I offered not to cover for him if he asked. I didn't want us to get involved. He never asked me to make excuses for him, but about a year ago, Lisa called me and asked if I had seen Jerry. I said no, but that I had a message saying he would be late. He was having car trouble. He explained what had happened, but I didn't understand half of what he said. To me, it was complete nonsense. Anyway, he had a bright yellow Mustang that was only a few years old. It shouldn't have broken down so soon. Jerry was a car nut. To me, a car is just a box on wheels that gets you from point A to point B. If something's wrong with the car, a light comes on the dashboard, and I take it to the garage. Jerry showed up 2 hours late, and I told him that Lisa had called me and repeated what she said. He just smiled at me. Then I remembered that last year he had asked me to make excuses for him. Actually, he didn't ask me to. He just told me what to say to Lisa. I told him it made me angry and not to do it again. He said it was the first time he'd ever done it. He'd been caught off guard. I told him I didn't want to know the details. He spent the rest of the day bringing me beer. A few weeks before I left, some things were bothering me. Small things. But over the last week, our sex life had become even more active than before. I put it down to wanting to have a baby. As I said, she didn't work on Friday afternoons, but twice I came home, and the things she usually did on Fridays hadn't been done. She was very particular about that. It gave us a chance to enjoy the weekend and not worry about housework. I asked her about it, but she evaded the question. I started to worry. Too many things were wrong. I kept an eye on her clothes and other signs that she might be having an affair, such as coming home late and making up excuses. I didn't find anything suspicious, so I didn't think much of it. I was just being paranoid, married to a beautiful woman. I was on my way home, and we could talk about it so I could calm down. I got there faster than I expected, maybe because the roads were empty and I was speeding a little. There was still roadwork on the A339, and the detour via the A34 to the A303 was fine for trucks, but I was in a small rental car. It was a Fiat. At least that's what the badge on the steering wheel said. But I'm local, I know all the detours, and I headed for Kingsclear. As I drove past, I saw a yellow Mustang that looked like Gerald's car. But he should have been at work. I knew he was working nights this week. I'm sure there's more than one yellow Mustang in this area. I got home just before 7. Even bought a bouquet of flowers when I stopped to fill up. When I pulled up to the house, the first thing I noticed was that Carrie's car wasn't there. We had talked on the phone last night, and I had sent her the usual text messages we usually send each other almost every night to say, "Good night, sweetheart," or "Sleep well, I love you," and in the morning, "Wake up, sunshine," or "Good morning, sweetheart," and other sentimental nonsense. We would respond with something similar and always try to reply. I did that last night at 11 o'clock. I got the usual response. She didn't know I was coming home this morning. It was supposed to be a surprise. Instead of a little morning message, I was waiting for a kiss and hopefully something more, since I had been away for a whole week. I entered the house, and it seemed empty. I took the flowers with me and quietly went upstairs, but our bed was empty. It looked like no one had slept there. Where was she? An unpleasant thought crossed my mind. I tracked Carrie's phone. It was in Kingsclear. I was afraid of what would happen next, but I had to do it. Gerald's phone was also in Kingsclear. That meant Gerald's car was parked at the hotel. My best friend was sleeping with my wife. What an idiot I was. I thought about it, then sent her a message. "Good morning, sweetheart. What are your plans for today?" It was longer than my usual morning greeting. I went back. "Nothing. Just doing some chores around the house. I miss seeing my beautiful wife's face. Call me. I look terrible. You won't want to see me. I love you. You're always beautiful to me. Come on, what are you trying to hide?" "Nothing. Give me a couple of seconds." The next moment, her face appeared on my phone screen. Just her face. It was good that I was holding the phone close to me. She couldn't see where I was. "I don't know, honey. You look beautiful, fresh, and rested. Where are you?" "In bed, of course. Where else?" I laughed. "Whose bed?" She giggled. "Ours, of course." "You may be in bed, but it's not our bed." I moved the phone to the side so the camera could capture the empty bed behind me. There was a noise on the line. She had dropped the phone. I couldn't see, but it sounded like a hotel room. Then a hand leaned over, picked up the phone, and turned it off. The light flashed, and I caught a glimpse of Gerald's face before the screen went blank. Although it was still early, my next call was to Lisa. I knew she was already up and getting their little daughter ready for school. I asked where Gerald was. She said he was at work. I called him Gerald, not Jerry. She said he was working nights this week. He did that from time to time, and she was expecting him home in the next couple of hours. She knew I was out, so why did I ask? I told her I had come home to surprise Carrie. I asked if she could track Gerald's phone. She asked me to give her a minute. Her voice sounded alarmed. I mentioned that I didn't think Gerald was at work. I heard her mutter something like, "I'm going to kill that bastard this time." She asked if she could talk to Carrie. I said she wasn't home. All I heard was bastard, and then she hung up. It was probably too hard for him to change. I went to the kitchen, made some coffee, and waited for the storm. I wondered what excuses she would come up with. While drinking my coffee, I took out my laptop and looked up the rules for divorce. It was all pretty simple. If you've come to the conclusion that your differences are irreconcilable, it's easy. But it seemed too easy if one of the spouses had cheated. It would take longer and probably cost more, and the result would be the same. But I was tempted to choose cheating. Maybe it would make me weak or a cuckold, but at least it would be honest. I wanted people to know the real reason, not just that we had a fight. I thought maybe she was going through a midlife crisis. I thought that only happened to men. Less than an hour later, she came home. She burst through the door looking terrible. I think she cried all the way home. She stopped in front of me. I nodded toward the chair. She sat down across from me at the kitchen table. Looking at her, I asked, "Why?" "It just happened. It doesn't mean anything. It was just a stupid mistake." Tears streamed down her face. "You didn't answer my question, and that was nonsense. It's not just driving an hour to stay in a hotel with my ex-best friend. That takes planning." She continued, "I'm sorry, I love you. It was a stupid mistake. I won't do it again. It was the last time." Well, that almost answered one of my next questions, but it led to others. "How long?" "About 4 weeks. We only did it 3 times. It was supposed to be the last time." "I'm sorry, honey. It just happened." "You still haven't answered my question, why? Tell me it just happened?" She seemed to gather all her strength, as if an explanation would make me forgive her. No way in hell. "Remember that party you couldn't come to a month ago because you were working, and I went with Gerald and Lisa? Lisa left early because their daughter was sick, and Gerald and I were left alone, and, well, one thing led to another, and when he drove me home, we ended up in the back seat of his car and I was drunk. I'm sorry, dear. He filmed us, and now he's blackmailing me to do it again. It's over. It was doomed because we were going to start a family. I was going to blackmail him in return." She lowered her eyes to her knees. I was furious. "I would never forgive a one-time mistake, but you did it twice. Getting drunk and ending up in his car the first time is a poor excuse, but the second time there's no excuse. So no, I won't forgive you. You better go upstairs and pack your things. I'm filing for divorce on the grounds of adultery. I know it doesn't mean much. Okay, it'll show how stupid I was to let my wife cheat on me behind my back, but it'll show who's to blame and I can live with that." "Where am I supposed to go?" "I don't care. To your parents? You can't go to Lisa's because I already told her what Gerald did last night, so don't count on her help." "I can't go to Mom and Dad. They only have a one-room apartment." "That's not my problem." I think I would have liked to show her parents what a cheat she was. Crying, she went downstairs with her suitcase and left. A little later, I heard her car drive away. I didn't like her parents, and I'm sure they felt the same way about me. They thought she had married beneath her. They were quite wealthy. They used to have a big house, but when Carrie left, they sold it and moved into a smaller one. They spent a lot of time traveling around Europe in their big motorhome. It was a one-bedroom bungalow, but it had a lot of space. Again, not my problem. About an hour later, my phone started ringing like crazy. I answered Lisa's call and ignored the rest. It turned out that while she was taking her daughter to school, Gerald had come by, picked up his things, and left. I told her he'd be easy to find in his yellow Mustang. She said he'd left the car because it was in her name. It was actually her car, although she never drove it. Their bank account was almost empty. I reminded her to cancel all their credit cards. She had already done so. I talked to my mom and dad and told them what had happened. They were upset for me. They loved Carrie and had known Gerald almost as long as I had. They asked if there was anything they could do to help. I thanked them but said no, then turned off my cell phone and unplugged the landline. I decided not to stay there. I still had a room at a hotel in Manchester. I decided to go there. I thought about it some more. I needed to finish the course to get a promotion. I was sure my situation would add interest to my term paper next week, but I had to prevent Carrie from returning to the house. I went to a local hardware store and bought some simple bolts, which I installed on all the exterior doors, 2 on each. It didn't look very nice, but it worked. Then it occurred to me, if I blocked the locks, how would I get out myself? But then I realized it was easy. I took a ladder and placed it against one of the back bedroom windows. I locked the locks, climbed out the window, and closed it behind me. It wasn't locked, but no one knew it was open. I removed the ladder. I did the right thing, and the situation was a good lesson for the rest of the course. I managed to contact a lawyer and start divorce proceedings. He said that the affair wouldn't matter and would cost us much more. He convinced me that irreconcilable differences would be quicker and wouldn't prevent me from telling everyone why we were getting divorced. In fact, quick was good. I wanted her to leave, so I decided to go for it. I assumed we would have to sell the house and my half of the proceeds would go toward the divorce. The following Friday, I came home late. I managed to get into the house without any problems. Nothing had been touched, but there was a stack of flyers and a letter from my lawyer on the front door, which I noticed. I hadn't turned on my phone all week. I only used the landline. Now I turned it on, called my parents, and told them I was back. We chatted for a while. They asked how I was doing. I told them I had received the divorce papers and asked if I could move in with them if it came to that. They said they would clear out all the junk from my old bedroom and I could sleep there until things settled down. I called Lisa to see how she was doing. Things were bad. Gerald had run off with most of their money, even though they didn't have much to begin with. She had sold the Mustang, which would help her get by for a while, but Gerald had disappeared without a trace. On Saturday, I pottered around the house and garden, thinking about what needed to be done to get the house ready for sale. The irony of it all, the guy who used to do all this work for me was now forcing me to sell the house. Bastard. I had just finished mowing the lawn to take my mind off things when I looked back and saw the straight lines I had cut in the grass. They looked good. I looked around to see what needed painting. I could probably handle that. When I went into the house to make a cup of coffee, I heard a key in the door. The door opened, and Carrie walked in with her mom and dad. I was waiting for them. I called her mother a warrior, and her father a henpecked husband. We still didn't like each other, and this situation probably only made things worse. They either assumed I'd be back on Saturday or tracked my phone. It didn't matter. We had to talk about this somehow. Better sooner than later. The henpecked husband was carrying Carrie's bags. "I told you to get out," I said, looking at Carrie. The battle axe lunged at me. "This is her house, too. She lives here. We couldn't get in last week. What did you do?" I ignored her question. She gave up her right to this house when she first slept with my friend. I could tell from their faces that she hadn't told them the whole story. I continued. "She cheated on me 3 times. At least she admitted that, but once was enough. She has to go." I think that scared them a little. She probably told them it was only once, not 3 times, but that didn't faze the warrior for long. "She can't. You have responsibilities. She's pregnant." Carrie was sobbing uncontrollably. "Well, whose baby is it, Gerald's or mine? We'll see. In the meantime, she's leaving. I think you're going on a cruise soon. She can stay with you and get better there." Carrie looked at me and whispered, "We used condoms." "So Gerald just happened to have a condom the first time? That just proves he planned it all." She cried even harder. "Well, no, not the first time, but it all happened so fast." "You know Gerald has the morals of a street cat, and you slept with him without protection while we were trying to have a baby. And you probably planned this last trip. You went to a hotel far away from us, and Gerald probably planned a night shift when I wasn't there so you could have sex. So go to hell and get out of here. If the baby is mine, I'll pay child support. If not, then go to hell and get child support from Gerald." I'm sure you heard that he just left, leaving Lisa in the shit. I don't think her parents ever heard me swear so much at once. I wanted to know something. I'll probably regret this, but I need to know before I go to bed where it happened the second time. Here, in our bed? No, I went to Gerald and Lisa's. Lisa was at work. In their bed? She lowered her eyes and muttered, "Yes." "Honey, I made a mistake. I'm sorry. I think Gerald set this up. He got me drunk at the party. I didn't know he filmed the first time and was using it to blackmail me. He told me that Lisa was starting to suspect that he was cheating on her, but she would never think that he was flirting with his best friend's wife. Gerald knows how you feel about cheating, and if you found out that we slept together, you would divorce me, even for one mistake. It was only after the second time that I thought I could blackmail him in return. So last night I filmed us and told him that if he didn't stop, I'd tell Lisa, and he'd lose his wife and family. I did the wrong thing, but can you forgive me? I was trying to fix everything. If that was true, why didn't she just go home after getting the recording she wanted? She could see what I was thinking. She held out her phone to me. I didn't take it. Honey, look. I did this morning. I'm sorry I didn't come home. I was so worried and tired. As soon as she said it, she realized how it sounded. She was tired because she had been having sex all night. Her face went pale, and if the war axe hadn't been supporting her, she would have fallen. The assistant took Carrie's phone and showed me a video of Carrie screaming and threatening Gerald. He said he had uploaded it to the cloud so Gerald couldn't find it. The video looked convincing, but it could have been filmed after I caught them. I shook my head. It might have stopped him, but if you told Lisa, he would probably have done the same thing and just left, leaving Lisa with the child. He left, and no one knows where he is. Maybe that was a little unfair. I remembered him saying he was a fast runner and told him he'd have to run far, and he'd probably done both. You know how I feel about cheating, but I love you. And if you'd come and told me about it on the first day, and we'd told Lisa, we might have been able to work things out. I don't know. It didn't happen, so I don't know what I would have done, but now it's over between us. I took the divorce papers and handed them to Henpecked. They left. With the help of Battle Axe and Plantain, she began fighting for a divorce. We did a DNA test as soon as we could. The child wasn't mine. Battle Axe and Plantain knew there was no way back. They stopped bothering me and she signed the divorce papers. They bought out my share of the house. Carrie and the child needed a place to live. I didn't mind, and their plans for the immediate future were probably ruined. It was after the last game of the summer, and the visiting team had already gone home. Someone found a watch in the locker room. We called their club and arranged to have it sent to us. Then I had an idea how to find Gerald. On Monday morning, I called the English and Welsh Cricket Association. I said that a guy named Gerald Jones had left something behind. Did they have his address so I could send him the watch? They said they had his details, but he lived far away from our club and they couldn't give me that information, but if I sent the watch, they would mail it to him. The tracking device I put in the small box was inexpensive and ran on a battery for a month. I don't know if Gerald noticed the small electronic device. He was more of a technical person. So I found him north of Huddersfield. I looked up cricket clubs in the area and found only one. I knew where he would be on Sunday afternoon. I called the cricket club and confirmed that he was there. But they wouldn't give me his address either. I had a plan. I had known it for years. I knew his habits. On that cold, windy, and rainy Sunday morning, I took an early train to London and then to Huddersfield. Like everyone else, I dressed warmly to keep from getting wet in the rain. The journey took several hours, but when I arrived in Huddersfield, I went to the cricket club. The rain hadn't stopped, and it was cold. There was a large American car in the parking lot. It wasn't as new and shiny as a Mustang. I needed to check something. I lifted the wheel, and the alarm went off. Gerald ran out to turn it off. Then I realized it was my car. I had to do this several times before he stopped setting off the alarm. Now the small hatchet I had brought with me came in handy. I smashed all the panels with the hatchet. I slashed the tires and beat the aluminum rims. Now they were useless. I think everyone was watching the highlights of the England-New Zealand match. I had recorded the program at home. I hid in the shadows and waited. It was still raining cats and dogs, and my raincoat was soaked through. I saw him come out of the club with a few others, and they all headed in the same direction. I followed them. In the end, Gerald was left alone. He was staggering, as he always did when he left the club. He wasn't going to get behind the wheel. I knew that because he didn't want to lose his license and not be able to drive his big cars. Unfortunately, on the way home, he fell in a dark spot. I may have had something to do with it. He was lying face up. I'm sure he could only see silhouettes. He was mumbling something until I jumped on his right knee. There was a loud noise, like his scream. Then everything went quiet. I think he lost consciousness, although I thought he was stronger than that. I can imagine how his right knee was broken. The same thing happened to his right hand when I stepped on it. Now it will be difficult for him to hold a bat, let alone run. The next steps were planned. The fact that he was unconscious made the task easier. I unbuckled his belt and fly, pulled out his genitals, and wrapped them with a cable tie. I didn't tighten it too much. I didn't want to create extra work for the ambulance. I buttoned his pants. I felt sorry for him, so I took his phone out of his pocket and dialed 999. I said that a man had been beaten up and needed medical attention. I didn't want him to die of hypothermia. Lisa wouldn't be able to get alimony from a dead man. Neither would Carrie. I spoke with a fake Yorkshire accent, which probably sounded more Mexican or Pakistani. I didn't turn off the phone, just dropped it on his chest and disappeared into the darkness. It took about 12 minutes for the ambulance to arrive. They took him away. The police arrived. I stayed in the dark until everyone left. On the way back to the station, I threw the axe in a trash can, and a mile or so later, I got rid of the gloves I was wearing. I got on the train and went home. I think I slept most of the way. It's a good thing London was the last stop, or God knows where I would have ended up. I went to bed late and was completely exhausted. At 2 in the morning, the phone rang. I looked at it. It was Lisa's number. Damn, what now? She couldn't hold back. I found him. I found that bastard. I'm still listed as his next of kin. It looks like he was beaten up in Leeds or somewhere up north, and I was still in his phone as his emergency number. The police didn't say, but they hinted that it might have been the wife of some guy he'd been involved with. They asked if I knew anyone who would do that to him, and I said no, because no one knew where he was until they called. It wasn't you, Dave? It was probably the plastic zip tie around his private parts that gave him away. I just grunted and said, "I'll come by in the morning." She caught him, and social services will squeeze every last penny out of him. I didn't want to shatter her illusions, but I'm sure he'll run away again. But he won't be able to run fast or far, I'm sure of that. And I mustn't forget to tell Carrie where he was. I was looking forward to the next cricket season and a couple of pints of Doom Bar. Okay, let me introduce myself first. My name is Gary Smith. I've been married to Corinne for 22 years, and we have 2 children, Louise, 18, and Graham, 19. I work as a warehouse manager. My wife works as a personal assistant to the director of art at Oxford University. It is a very well-funded institution, and its director, John Wilson, is a very wealthy man. I am 6 feet 1 inch, broad-shouldered, and in good shape. Many women tell me that I don't look my age, 53, but more like 45. At least that's what they tell me. My wife is 5 feet 5 inches, slim and fit, and goes to the gym. Corinne has short, dark hair and could also pass for 45 rather than 53. Louise is similar to my wife in height and build, while Graham takes after me. He is tall and well-built. Our family has had good times and bad times, but the good definitely outweighs the bad. Nothing special has happened in our lives. Our jobs allow us to go on vacation, buy the cars we like, and pay off our mortgage. Life is good, and none of us are looking for thrills. My wife and I go on dates once or twice a month. We both dress up and go to a restaurant, bar, or pub, and sometimes we go dancing at a local club that is suitable for people our age. Sometimes we go to nightclubs, but we usually choose places with music we like. In our case, that's rock music from the 80s and 90s. My wife is a very good dancer, and I'm just an average guy with 2 left feet, but I know my wife loves to dance, so I get up and dance with her. Yes, other men ask her to dance, but she always politely declines with a smile, holding my hand. Both of our children did well in school, and Louise now wants to work in finance. She has obtained all the necessary diplomas and is currently pursuing a degree in business. Now she just needs to find a company where she can work and get additional training. Graham loves working with me in the warehouse. He is studying engineering and will eventually work as an engineer. But for now, he enjoys helping me. My wife has been a personal assistant for 20 years. Over the years, she has worked with many people and has become a sought-after and experienced professional. That's my family. Now let's get down to business. For the past 2 months, Corinne and I have been constantly arguing about everything under the sun. We fight over trivial things. For example, we recently had a huge fight over who was going to cook dinner, and in the end, after throwing a bunch of things at each other, we cooked dinner separately. Corinne's mood swings from yelling at me to tears, hugs, and kisses, and then she drags me upstairs and makes passionate love to me. And all of this happens in rapid succession. Graham and Louise notice the cold atmosphere when they come home from university, but Corinne can't or won't explain what's going on, and I'm tired of this life. Something has to change. I've tried to talk to her. I've tried many times over the last 2 months. Louise has tried to talk to her, but she can't or won't explain why we're fighting, why she won't explain herself and the reasons for her behavior. Yes, I know what you're thinking. It all started 2 months ago, and maybe something else started. Maybe at work. Maybe with a young intern or her boss, but he's over 70 and happily married to a much younger woman. Maybe with a young intern, but we asked our friends to keep an eye on her, and they haven't noticed anything suspicious. She does her job, doesn't talk to anyone unless she has to, and comes home on time every evening without fail. And if my wife isn't cheating on me, maybe it's me. Maybe she found out I'm having an affair. Well, I'm sorry, but my limit is a little flirting with some women at the warehouse. But it never goes beyond joking around and never turns physical. But maybe my wife is having an emotional affair? Maybe she goes online and chats with men in chat rooms? Isn't that fashionable these days? In any case, today it will all come to an end. I got home first, went inside, took a shower, changed into jeans and a t-shirt, went to the kitchen, and made coffee for both of us. 5 minutes later, my wife walked in the door, saw the light on in the kitchen, came in and stopped. She looked at me, then at the 2 cups of coffee. Corinne, go get changed and come back to the kitchen. We need to talk. She was about to say something, but stopped, went upstairs, took a shower, and 10 minutes later came back to the kitchen, picked up her warm cup of coffee, and drank it. She was wearing my old t-shirt and leggings that accentuated her figure. Gary, she began, but I raised my hand. Corinne, we haven't spoken to each other in 2 months. We've barely exchanged a few words, and when we did, it was only sarcasm or insults. Your mood swings are out of control, and I'm tired of it. If you don't love me anymore or want a divorce, tell me so we can move on. She put her hand over her mouth and took a deep, uneven breath. I also noticed a single tear rolling down her cheek. Gary, I'm so sorry. I didn't understand. I was a bitch, wasn't I? Tears streamed down her face. Yes, you did, but now I want it to stop. But first, please explain what happened. Gary, my love, I wanted to tell you what happened to me, but I kept putting it off and was afraid of how you would take it. My head was a mess and I was confused. You did something stupid. Your head is chaotic, and you're confused, right? Corinne, what did you do? I'm not sure I want to know, but tell me anyway. Yes. Maybe stupid isn't quite the right word. Gary, I want you to think very carefully about something. Imagine you wake up in an unfamiliar bed in an unfamiliar house, and next to you is a naked stranger. I stood up and leaned toward her. "What the hell?" I asked in a dangerously calm voice. "Gary, please listen to me. Let me say what I want to say." I sat back down and gestured for her to continue. "I don't know who that man was. I've never seen him before, at least I don't think so. When I woke up, I was naked too." She saw my face, stood up, and moved away from the table. I could see that I had frightened her. "Corinne, I'm sorry. I'm angry and furious, but I would never hurt you physically, no matter how angry I am." She slowly sat down again. "Okay, like I said, I was naked too. I pulled back the covers and looked at my body. I didn't notice anything. No fingerprints, no handprints, no bruises. There were no signs of sex." "So, you woke up in a strange bed, in a strange house, with a strange man. You claim you didn't sleep with him, but you noticed that he slept with someone else, and you were naked too, right?" "Yes, that's exactly what happened. I'm sorry, Gary." "So that's why we haven't spoken to each other for the last 2 months? That's why we haven't exchanged a word? And your mood swings were off the charts. You blamed yourself for possibly sleeping with someone else?" Corinne covered her face with her hands and cried. It felt like 2 months of tears. I just sat there watching her cry, tears of pain and despair. Now she understood how much she had ruined everything. Finally, without waiting for my answer, she looked up and wiped her tears. "Gary, do you want a divorce?" she asked quietly. "I don't know yet, but I want you to answer the most important question. Did you sleep with that stranger?" "Think carefully before you answer," I said, trying to sound as calm as possible. She wiped her eyes and whispered with a sad expression, "I don't know." Her eyes were filled with tears. "What do you mean you don't know?" "Explain what you mean," I said in the same calm voice. "Gary, honestly, I don't know. I can't answer your question. All I know is that I woke up just like I told you. Corinne, we're not getting anywhere. Okay, let's start over. When did you meet this man?" "Gary, I didn't meet him. I just woke up next to him." "Yes, that's right. You were at work, and then you woke up in bed with a stranger whom you claim you've never seen before." "Gary, I'm telling you the truth. I don't know him, and I don't know how I ended up in his bed." "Okay, let's pretend I believe you. What do you remember? If I remember correctly, you said you had to stay late at work to finish some paperwork, right?" "Yes, Gary, I remember finishing the paperwork. I remember turning off the computer. I remember talking to a few cleaners." "Okay, Corinne. So far, it sounds plausible. You texted me around 8 p.m., saying you were on your way home. But if I remember correctly, you got home around 9:30. What happened during that time?" I could see that she was desperately trying to remember what had happened. It bothered me that even though she knew something bad had happened, she couldn't or wouldn't tell me. "Gary, honey, I don't remember anything that happened from the moment I left the building until I woke up in that house. All I remember is waking up naked with a strange man next to me. Honestly, Gary, I'm not playing games. Corinne, look me in the eyes. Tell me you don't remember anything. Tell me you didn't sleep with someone. Tell me what the hell has been going on for the last 2 months." She leaned toward me, took my hands, and looked me straight in the eyes. She didn't flinch. No nervous tics, no blushing, no dilated pupils. There's a saying, "The eyes are the window to the soul." And in that moment, I looked deep into my wife's eyes and saw several things. Confusion, definitely. Despair, yes, that was there. Sadness, yes, that was there too. But mostly hope. "Okay, this is going to be hard for you, but I need to know what happened before I can trust you again. First, we're going to see a doctor. We'll both get tested for infections. Then we'll see a psychiatrist and find out why you're having memory lapses." "Okay, Gary, I remember one thing. My clothes were in a pile next to the bed, and I had to get dressed quickly because I knew you were waiting for me. I had to take a taxi home, and I have to admit that I thought I could get there, change, take a shower, and you wouldn't find out. I'm so sorry. I should have told you right away. I should have trusted you. But I was so confused and wanted to remember what happened. All my hostility toward you was the result of self-hatred. Corinne, I'm really shocked and disappointed that you couldn't tell me what happened. I'm your husband, for God's sake. If it's true that you didn't sleep with him and got out of the house unharmed, then I'd like to think that I'd be grateful to you for coming home safe and sound. But why the hell didn't you tell me? Gary, I know. I'm sorry. I somehow transferred my anger and disappointment onto you and made your life hell. I promise if you can forgive me, I'll make it up to you. So tell me, why waste all this time and energy fighting and yelling when we could be trying to figure out who this man is and why he chose you? Gary, I don't know. Maybe I was so disappointed and angry with myself, but I'm sorry again. She held out her hand to me. Instinctively, I reached out and took it. We finally got up and went to the bedroom. The thought of not sleeping with my wife crossed my mind. But obviously, I'd been doing this for 2 months, so one more day didn't matter. We were emotionally and physically exhausted, so we just stripped down to our underwear and got into bed. My wife laid her head on my chest, and we tried to fall asleep. The next morning, we both called work and said we needed a few days off for personal reasons. We put on our home clothes, made breakfast and coffee. While my wife was making breakfast, I mentally flipped through the guidebook for cheating wives. My wife never hides her phone. On the contrary, we often show each other photos from Facebook, from work, of our children, friends, and relatives. Corinne almost never came home late, and if she did, she always called me and let me know when she would be back. So other than that fateful day, she was never more than 10 to 15 minutes late. Always had a good reason, and always said she would be happy to show me her work. She always changed into her home clothes, but didn't take a shower unless we were sharing water, which happened quite often. She didn't hide her phone, hide messages, texts, or emails. In fact, she almost always showed them to me. Did she smell like another man? Number? Did she wear sexier clothes to work? Honestly, she always looks professional, elegant, and, in my opinion, beautiful. That hasn't changed. She doesn't wear new perfume or jewelry. And as for our sex life? Well, on average, it was 3 times a week. But it was almost never planned, always spontaneous. Except for the last 2 months, when, looking back, I realized that my wife was clearly seducing me. But the sex itself was just as good. Just a little more intense, and now I understand why. And one last question. Has her personality changed? Has she been doing anything differently? Has her daily routine changed? Yes, her anger and upset, accompanied by remorse over the last 2 months, are definitely a change. My wife rarely used to get angry about anything. So in conclusion, my wife ended up in bed with someone. Maybe she slept with this person, maybe she didn't. But for the last 2 months, my wife has been acting like a bitch, crying and feeling guilty. While my wife was making breakfast, these thoughts were running through my head. 2 months ago, I trusted my wife with my life. 2 months ago, I thought she trusted me enough to tell me anything. So how could I believe her when she said she hadn't been used? I was clearly frowning, and my wife looked at me, trying to figure out what I was thinking. Gary, you're wondering if you can trust me, aren't you? She asked sadly. Corinne, if we switched roles, would you trust me? Honestly? No, I wouldn't. Gary, how can I make you trust me? How would you make me trust you? I was about to answer when my wife's phone beeped, signaling an email. Corinne reached for the phone but stopped and motioned for me to read the message. Gary, I'm not hiding anything. I nodded and unlocked the screen. There was a photo of my wife naked next to a young man. I showed the photo to Corinne. She burst into tears and gasped for air. I took a deep, calming breath. So you were telling the truth. You really were in bed with a naked man, and it looks like he was having sex with you. At that moment, another message arrived, this time a text. So, Corinne, it's been 2 months. 2 months you've probably been hiding our encounter. 2 months you've felt guilt and remorse, but you couldn't tell your husband so he wouldn't divorce you. Thanks for the photos, videos, and for finally letting me see your beautiful body. I spent a lot of time imagining what you look like under your clothes. You know, for a middle-aged woman with children, you look gorgeous. I like your breasts, they're the perfect size. Anyway, you don't know who I am. But I've been watching you for some time, and, like others before you, I've become attached to you. If you're brave enough to tell your husband about waking up in bed with me, assure him that I haven't had full sex with you yet. But I will. I've attached a video to this letter. If you still feel brave, show it to your husband. I won't ruin your fun. Anyway, by now you've probably already shown this message to your husband. If you're brave enough, I'll get in touch with you. We were both in shock. I was about to watch the video, but Corinne stopped me. Gary, please don't watch it. I don't know what he filmed, and I don't care. But whatever it is, we shouldn't watch it. If you watch it, you'll probably want to kill me. I looked at her and thought she might be hiding something, but I understood her motives. After all, if it were my wife, I definitely wouldn't want to watch it, so I decided not to press the issue. So, your potential lover didn't have sex with you in the literal sense of the word, but he stripped you both naked. I'm guessing he rubbed himself against you. She looked at her hands and sighed. Gary, I understand how it looks. But I really don't remember what happened. It's as if my mind has blocked out those memories. Corinne, I love you, I really do. But damn it, you're so stupid sometimes. That bastard obviously drugged you. Then he took you somewhere and satisfied his desires. I don't understand why he didn't sleep with you. Gary, aren't you glad he did? Of course I am. Corinne, listen to me. You're a beautiful woman. I know that men fall in love with you, and I know that you reject them. That's why I never worried about where you were or who you were with. And I'm not the kind of husband who wants to watch you cheat on me with someone else. I'm sorry, but as you well know, I would never share you. I took a deep breath and calmed down. I don't know why that bastard did that, but I need you to think about who could have put you up to it and when. I'm still angry that you didn't tell me about all this. We'll deal with that later, but right now we need to find that bastard. Corinne took a deep breath and closed her eyes. Okay. I was one of the last people to leave the building. I finished my paperwork, got up, and put on my jacket. I remember saying goodbye to the 2 cleaning ladies. I remember going into my boss's office and putting some documents on his desk. Then I remember going back to my desk and picking up my briefcase. And the last thing I remember is finishing my coffee. Yes, dear. I suppose the next thing you remember is waking up in bed with that bastard. Yes, Hari. Oh, damn it, I'm sorry, my love. I should have been more careful. It was one of the cleaners, wasn't it? Yes, it was him. Describe him to me. Okay, I'll try. I've only seen them a few times. One of them is an older man, maybe a few years older than us. He's short, broad-shouldered. You could call him craggy. He's also bald. And the other one? Tall, young, maybe in his early 20s. Thin, broad shoulders, long hair. Okay, judging by the photo of the man on your phone, he has a toned stomach and a toned body. If I were a gambler, I'd say he's young, but I'd also say that both of them are involved in this. My wife looked at me and said quietly, Gary, my love, we'll be okay, won't we? You believe I didn't cheat on you on purpose, right? And honestly, I didn't know anything about what happened. I stood up, walked around the table, hugged my wife, pressed her head against my chest, and put my hand on her head. For now, yes, I believe you. I believe you didn't cheat on me on purpose. I also believe you're telling the truth, or at least what you believe to be the truth. I leaned down, touched her face with my hand, and wiped away her tears. Yes, my love. Everything will be all right. But I swear to you that I will make those bastards pay for what they've done. And I suspect they've done this before. We finished breakfast, went upstairs, and got dressed. My wife chose jeans and a t-shirt and put on a jacket. I usually wear jeans, a t-shirt, a leather jacket, and steel-toed boots. First, we drove to John, my wife's boss. I drove us to the office where my wife worked. We entered the building and approached the security guard at the reception desk. He clearly knew me and my wife and asked me to sign in. My wife looked at the security guard, George, and said, "George, as you know, this is my husband, Gary. We want to talk to John about something personal. We don't know how long it will take." "Don't worry, Mrs. Smith, he's in his office right now. Take your time, I hope you can work everything out," George said, taking off his cap. As we headed for the elevator, I noticed a young man in overalls pushing a cleaning cart. He saw me and started to walk away. I wanted to follow him, but my wife stopped me. "Gary, let's talk to John first. He can wait." Reluctantly, I followed my wife into the elevator. When the elevator reached the top floor, she put her arm around me. The doors opened, and we stepped out, arm in arm. At the end of the hallway was a door with a sign that read, "John Wilson." There was nothing else to indicate what he did for a living. I guess he didn't need to advertise it. My wife knocked, and we went in. John was a thin man with sparse, short gray hair. He had a thin, strong face with deep wrinkles, but not from worry. I liked him. He was a practical, strong-willed man. When we entered, he looked at us in surprise, stood up, walked past us, and closed the door. Then John came over, gave my wife a quick hug, and held out his hand to shake mine. We had known each other for a long time and considered ourselves friends, so I shook his hand. "Corinne, Gary, I thought you were having a private day today," he asked, offering us 2 comfortable chairs, then went to make us black coffee in the coffee machine in the corner of the room. Corinne spoke first. "John, have you noticed that I've been out of sorts for the last couple of months?" John looked at me as if I could prompt him on what to say. But I remained silent. This was my wife's show. "Well, Corinne, to be honest, I have noticed that you have been preoccupied and your mood has been a little unstable, but it hasn't affected your work and you are still doing everything efficiently. I'm sorry, but I thought you might be having some problems at home, but I know you and Gary are private people and probably didn't want me to get involved." "Okay, I've been very, very stupid. 2 months ago, something happened that I should have told you about, and more importantly, I should have told my husband." John looked at me again as Corinne began to cry. "Gary? What's going on?" he asked, looking confused. "John, I'm not going to beat around the bush. One or both of your cleaners are trying to blackmail my wife," I said, clenching my teeth. John stood up immediately. "Corinne, what's going on?" he asked her sharply. My wife wiped her eyes, took her phone out of her pocket, stood up, and showed John the photo and email. He immediately pressed the button on the intercom. "George, you and your team lock the doors. Find our 2 cleaners and bring them to my office immediately." "Yes, sir," was the short reply. He looked sympathetically at my wife, stood up, and took her by the hand. "Corinne, honey, I need to know everything. Start from the beginning." My wife wiped her face and blew her nose. For some reason, it made us all smile. John joked, "Corinne, honey, don't cry. It doesn't suit you, and your face isn't made for tears." He handed her a tissue. "Thanks, John. I'm sorry. I'm just so angry with myself. Anyway, the truth is, I don't know what happened to that man, Gary, and I think one or both of the cleaners put something in my coffee, kidnapped me, and then set up this blackmail scheme. And I was so stupid that I didn't tell you or my husband about it. I've been acting crazy around Gary for 2 months. John took it all in, then returned to his desk and called the personnel manager, Allison. "Allison, come to my office. We have a serious problem." When she replied that she would be there as soon as possible, he hung up. At that moment, George and another security guard brought in one of the cleaners, the older one. John looked at him, then at my wife, who nodded. Then he took out his phone, put it on the table, and turned on the recording to record everything. "So, Dominic, is this true?" When the cleaner didn't answer, George slowly squeezed Dominic's shoulder. George is a big man, 6 feet 4 inches and muscular. I can imagine how hard he can squeeze someone's arm. "Yes, my name is Dominic," the captive said through clenched teeth. "Do you know my assistant, Corinne Smith?" he asked. Dominic turned to my wife. "Oh, yes, I know her. I know every inch of her body. My son Jacob knows her even better." He started to giggle until my boot hit him in the groin. He collapsed to the floor, clutching his groin. My wife smiled, and George smiled back, helping him up. John smiled briefly, but then became serious again. Just as he was about to say something, Allison entered, looked around the room, and then looked at John. John put his finger to his lips to silence her. She came over and stood next to my wife. "So, Dominic, you claim that not only did you know Mrs. Smith, but you also had an intimate relationship with her? Apparently you did this by drugging her and kidnapping her with your accomplice for the purpose of blackmail?" Dominic looked around the room and realized he was caught. He was clearly still in pain, but he shrugged indifferently. "Yes, we drugged Mrs. Smith and kidnapped her, but blackmail was secondary. You see, Jacob and I have done this before. We've slept with a dozen women without their husbands knowing. Mrs. Smith was just another target." He looked at my wife. "Nothing personal, Mrs. Smith. It's just a game Jacob and I play. We kidnap and drug women like you. Happy married women who talk all day about their husbands, how wonderful they are, how perfect their marriages are, and how they would never cheat on their husbands. But under certain circumstances, they do cheat." He paused for effect, looking at the shocked faces. "It was supposed to be an easy game. But you didn't play by the rules, you didn't contact us, and you made sure that neither Jacob nor I were left alone with you. That's why we couldn't get to you." I stood up again and approached him. "Listen, you bastard, just one question. Did you or Jacob use my wife?" He tried to back away, but George stopped him. George squeezed his shoulder again, forcing him to his knees. "The last time you or Jacob used my wife after giving her drugs?" I asked in a calm but clearly restrained voice. He hesitated too long, and I punched him in the nose, not hard enough to break it, but hard enough to cause him severe pain. "No, we didn't do that!" he screamed in pain. I was very surprised by this. I lifted his head and moved closer to his face. "Explain to me. My wife was lying naked in your bed. Why didn't you do it?" I said in the same restrained voice. "Because it's part of the game. We put our wife or girlfriend in a compromising situation and choose whether to sleep with them, blackmail them, or both. In this case, we were just supposed to sleep with your wife." Before I could say anything, Corinne jumped up from her chair, ran over to Dominic, and hit him once, then twice, then 3 times. I grabbed her and pulled her away from him. "Enough, Corinne. We've heard enough from this piece of shit." My wife hugged me and burst into tears. I led her back to the chair, sat her down on my lap, and hugged her. John looked around the room and turned off the phone. Then he looked around the room again. "Okay, this is how it's going to be from now on. First, I'll edit the recording so that Dominic's confession is clear. After all, he confessed to kidnapping and poisoning Mrs. Smith. In addition, I received a message from other security guards that Jacob has been found and apparently also confessed to kidnapping and poisoning Mrs. Smith." He paused and checked his phone. "It looks like he also voluntarily named other girlfriends and wives they did this to. I'll ask our lawyers to start preparing the case and gather the necessary documents and signed confessions." He looked at Dominic rolling around on the floor. "You are, of course, fired, and will not receive any salary. The police have already been informed of your actions. And one last thing. You fell several times, hit your head on the table, and had an accident with another low table. Everyone in this room will confirm this." He looked at me, then at my wife. "Gary, please accept my apologies." I clearly did not check these people properly. At least my team did not check, but the responsibility lies with me. Therefore, I will ask Allison to give your wife a month's paid leave. I'll also talk to your boss, whom I know very well, and remind him of a favor he owes me. He'll agree to give you paid leave." He opened a desk drawer and pulled out a folder with glossy photos of a beautiful house with a pool next to the beach. "This is my wife's and my house in the Canary Islands. It has everything you need. Just bring your summer clothes and beach stuff. You can spend a month together or go to the local bar. Tell the bartender Dave to open an account for you, and tell him that if anything happens to you, he'll be in big trouble. Now, George, take Dominic downstairs, gather the rest of the security guards, and wait for the police. Gary, leave everything to me. Those two idiots got involved with the wrong people. We have good lawyers with good connections. They'll both get prison time, and the other couples whose lives they ruined will get compensation. If you need help with your marriage, I know a very good doctor. Now go home and pack your things. I'll send a car to take you to the airport. Let me know when you're ready." My wife and I were in shock. I stood up, took John by the hand, and simply said, "Thank you." My wife jumped up, hugged John, and kissed him on the cheek. Then she took my hand, and we left the office. We took the elevator down to the first floor and drove home. When we arrived, Corinne gathered all the sexy lingerie I had bought her over the years, as well as some light dresses, t-shirts, shorts, and bikinis. While she was doing that, I gathered t-shirts, shorts, and swim trunks. When the 3 suitcases were full, I had 1 and my wife had 2. Then we went downstairs, had dinner, drank some wine, and relaxed. We didn't talk about what had happened yet. That would come later. Tonight was just the 2 of us. We had slow, satisfying sex, taking our time, just enjoying each other. My wife cried with happiness. When we were both satisfied with our reunion, we lay naked in each other's arms. Tomorrow we would talk, go on vacation, and then go to the doctor to see if we really needed to fix anything in our marriage. Of course, the most important thing was to learn to trust my wife again, and to make sure that this situation never happens again. Dominic and Jacob were convicted and spent a lot of time in prison. As John promised, he contacted all the former couples and explained the situation. Some couples reconciled, others became friends with their former partners again. The rest simply accepted that justice had been served. Several ex-husbands vowed to wait for the 2 former cleaners and make sure they understood the seriousness of their crime. My wife and I got tested for STDs and every other infection the doctors could think of. Yes, we went to a marriage counselor who told Corinne to trust me more and believe me more. She didn't say anything to me except that I should continue to be a loving and supportive husband. All the tests came back normal. No infections were found. I assured my wife that I didn't blame her for what those bastards did to her, but told her she should talk to me if anything like that ever happened again. And I'll probably have trust issues for a while, but I'm sure we can work through it. We went to the Canary Islands for a month. We made love almost every night, went to that club, and got to know the bartender. My wife looked beautiful in light summer dresses, shorts, and bikinis, just like all the other women in the bar. The dress code was clearly informal. We didn't drink excessively, but we were slightly drunk at times. And yes, I danced. Badly. I really do have 2 left feet. But my wife is a good dancer, and by the 2nd week I was dancing much better. Did the locals ask her out? Yes, they did. Did she ever agree? No, she didn't. When 1 or 2 locals didn't get the hint, the bartender intervened. He was at least 6 feet 3 inches, with broad shoulders and a muscular build. He told the locals in no uncertain terms to back off. The warning was given, and only 1 guy didn't take it seriously. Now he walks with a cane, and his nose is broken for good. After that incident, the locals treated us with the utmost respect. We enjoyed a month away from home, making love on the beach with the waves caressing our legs. We weren't the only ones having sex on the beach. Several other couples took advantage of the warm weather and darkness. Overall, the idea was fantastic, and I am personally grateful to John. By the end of the month, we were ready to go home and resume our lives, and I'm happy to say that we made up, repaired our relationship, and our love life and marriage improved. In this case, the good guys won.